Have you ever wondered if franchising is right for your business? We're going to talk about the pros and cons for why you would start a franchise right now. So there's no doubt that the concept of franchising has provided numerous opportunities to people over time. The best thing about franchising is you have a proven concept that someone else has done and it's gone well for them, and they are going to basically let you rent their concept for a period of time, so long as you follow a lot of rules that are in a very long franchise agreement. So what we're going to talk about here today is diving into what are the reasons that you would franchise versus not franchise. Maybe you want to be all corporate. Maybe you want to have a totally different arrangement like a joint venture, right? There's a lot of different considerations. We're going to talk about the good things and the bad things about franchising. So what is franchising? Really quick, it is a relationship where you have a franchisor who owns the trademark and all the business systems, who's then licensing the systems and the trademark and training and supporting the franchisee to the franchisee. And what the franchisee does is they really have all the risk and they make all the profit except for the royalties that they have to pay to the franchisor, okay? So if you're the franchisee, you're in charge of scheduling, you're in charge of your employees, all of your HR matters, you're in charge of executing the system, you're in charge of local marketing. So really, you're in charge of a lot, but you're not going to be allowed to build your own totally new system as a franchisee. You got to color within the lines of the existing franchise system. What we're talking about today is you're a growing company. Let's say you're a restaurant that's got 3 or 4 units and you're thinking, hey, maybe we should start franchising. Let's say you're some other kind of business. Whatever it is, we're going to talk today about just considerations for whether you should get into franchising. Let's start with the cons. So here's 5 reasons why maybe you don't want to get into franchising. Number 1, you are going to lose some control over executing your business on a day-to-day basis. Specifically, you're going to completely lose control when it comes to hiring and firing employees. So if you have a franchisee that has an employee that you hate, let me be clear, you have no control over that whatsoever. Now, if the employee is violating the system, that's fine. Then there's a reason, there's a process for it, right? But you don't have control over your franchisee's employees, over little things about the way they do business, right? You only have control over what the system covers. And you have to be careful specifically about not controlling HR related issues, because then you can be deemed a joint employer, which that's a whole separate thing, but it's a catastrophic scenario for franchisors that you need to avoid at all costs. So that's number 1, you're gonna lose a little bit of control. The number 2 con of running a franchise is that you're going to have problem franchisees that you will have to deal with. Now, if you're starting from the beginning, maybe you can really sort through your potential franchisees and come up with a system to make sure that you have a good culture fit from those people. But in most franchise brands, there are some disgruntled franchisees that, for maybe good reasons, maybe bad reasons, are not happy. And you as the franchisor, you're going to have to deal with sort of the drama, the emotional, the personal when it comes to that, right? Because if they're not making money, they're going to be calling you to talk about it, right? So just be prepared to deal with problem franchisees, or also franchisees who say, look, I'm making a lot of money. I'm your top grossing store. You're going to change the system, but I'm already making all this money. So and that kind of goes to, you got to listen to your franchisees too. But just keep in mind that these franchisees are not just going to roll over and do whatever you say and think that you're the king. That's not exactly how it works. It's more of a mutual contractual relationship. So keep that in mind. Number 3, the number 3 con, just a consideration maybe is a better term. You will need an employee or several employees to deal with franchisee support. So you're going to need to think about training. You're going to need someone to answer calls. You're going to need someone to troubleshoot various problems franchisees may be having. If your system right now is all corporate, you may not have that person, but just be prepared to have to field that new position. The 4th consideration, sort of a con, the legal cost of franchising, especially starting out in franchising, is very high. So first of all, you're going to have a disclosure document drawn up, which includes the franchise agreement. Okay, you're going to have all these conversations about what are the terms of your franchise agreement. That's a big, massive project right there. And then once you actually have the franchise agreement and FDD completed, you're going to have to get an audit, which costs around $10,000 or so. Out of the gate, you're really within your second year, you're supposed to have an audit. But if you want to do business in franchise registration states, and there are 14 of those, you've got to do an audit in your first year, okay? So speaking of registration states, you're going to have to register in these registration states. Again, you can Google what they are. There's 14 of them. We'll talk about this more in depth in a future post. But you'll have to register every single year. And the renewal fees are a couple $100 per state, and the initial filing fees are around between $500 to $1,000 per state. And so this is every single year. So not to mention just the various franchisee issues. You will need a solid franchise law counsel and a budget for legal. That's really a big point that's important for you to understand if you're going to get into this. Let's move on to issue number 5. Any mistake that one franchisee makes reflects on the entire brand. So even though your brand is franchised, and for example, you don't have control over the employees that your franchisee hires, if one of those employees does something horrible that makes the news, now that's going to be reflected across the entire brand. Just look at what happened at Chipotle. They had a couple of food safety issues, and their sales went down 25%. It was pretty bad across the brand. Now, Chipotle is not a franchise, but they are under the same trademark, right? So they're a chain. It's the same concept. You're all under the same trademark. One person does bad things to the trademark, it affects the whole mark, which that's another reason to really have a screening process in place and an inspection process in place once you start franchising. Okay, so we talked about the cons and the issues you need to consider before you get too far down the road in franchising. And some of really the biggest financial one is just be prepared for legal. And now let's talk about the pros, reasons that you would want to franchise. Number 1, you can grow your brand using other people's money. So exponential growth, way faster than you could do yourself unless you have a tremendous amount of capital. That's first and foremost. Number 2, you can scale your business faster. So it's not just about money. It's also about human capital. It's about having people on the ground who are in communities, who know those communities, who can push your concept there because they can be dedicated to it, as opposed to you being all spread out trying to just grow rapidly and do it all yourself. So other people's money and other people's efforts. So another reason to franchise. The third reason to franchise is that you get royalties. Hey, you make some money off of it. So as opposed to owning, when you own a location, you're going to have to pay for all the startup costs. That's one big issue. But you're also going to have to continue to manage it. And if it goes well, then you get profits, and profits are nice. And the profits you would get from running a store are generally going to be more than the royalties you would get. But you get royalties and you're not running the store. You're just running the system. So royalties are a beautiful thing, and if you can figure out a way for someone to pay you a royalty for the value of using the system and the trademarks, that is a good thing. Number 4, you can get rebates for your brand. So this is also the case if you're a chain, by the way, so this is not unique to franchises, but you can get manufacturer and vendor rebates for your brand, and you also, importantly, can lower the prices by bulk purchasing. So your bulk purchasing agreements will allow you to have lower prices for your corporate stores and all your franchisees, and also, in theory, be another way for you to get some additional income coming into your company. And the number 5 reason why you would be a franchisor is that you're still in charge of the system, right? So the number 1 reason I gave to not be a franchisor is that you lose operational control. I'm going to bring that back and sort of give the counterpoint to that, but you still control the system, and you can change the system for a lot of issues, not all issues. If it's in the contract specifically, you can't change that. But you're still in control of the system. And to do that, you're going to have to do inspections, and you're going to have to provide support. But ultimately, the franchisor is in control of what happens as it relates to what goes on, with their concept and their brand. And all the details are going to be found in the franchise agreement itself. So that's it. So we covered the top 5 cons of franchising and top 5 pros of franchising. Overall, on balance, I would say you should do it if your individual situation warrants. How about that? Is that a good lawyer answer for you? Next time, we will talk about the 7 things it takes to run a franchise. So we talked about pros and cons today. Next time we're going to talk about if you decide to do it, here's what you're going to need. We'll see you next time.